Welcome back, everybody, to the Practical Woodsman podcast. I'm Rut, the creator and host of the Practical Woodsman. That's right, it's my immeasurable genius which has brought this all into existence. What say you and I have a little conversation about knives, hatchets, machetes, and saws? Do you like those things? Well, I would bet a nickel of somebody else's money that you do like those things, because they're a very popular topic among people interested in bushcraft and survival type things. So I've got a ton here piled up on my table. I'm going to attempt to make this into a podcast episode, meaning that it should be enjoyed by people who are just listening to the audio as much as the people who are watching the video and seeing these things that I'm going to be showing off. So I'm going to attempt to do that. We'll see how it goes. But first, we have to do the musical introduction to get us all in the mood. Winkety winkety. So let's get that out of the way. I'll be right here when it ends. All right, so it's going to be an interesting thing, seeing if I can pull off making this show, which is going to be built around me showing off these knives, hatchets, machetes, and knives, hatchets, machetes, and saws. Yes, saws is the one I left out. It's going to be interesting to see if a show built around me showing these things off, if I can make that as interesting to those of you who are just listening. We're just going to go through them one by one. I will show off my favorite hatchet, my absolute favorite machete, my absolute favorite knife, and my absolute favorite saws. And I'll also be including links in the description of this show so that you can get your hands on your own version of these things if you'd like. Now, let me tell you this. I don't work for these people. They've sent me these things with no conditions attached whatsoever. I'm not trying to sell you any of their products. I'm not working for them. This is not an infomercial. I'm simply showing off some good things that I've come across that I want to share with you. If you want to run out and buy one, I'm making the information available for you to do that, but I'm not working for them. And, if there are things I don't like about some of this stuff, I'm going to tell you. But for the most part, I think what I'm going to be showing you here is really high quality stuff. Let me tell you another thing before we get started on this. If you were to ask, I think most quote unquote bushcraft survival type guys, if you were to ask them, what would you pick if you could only have one thing? So one cutting tool to take with you into the woods. I believe, and you folks can correct me if I'm wrong, because you're watching those channels, I'm not. But I get the impression that most of the folks talking about these sorts of things would insist on going with their belt knife. I think that's what most of them would say. They'd say, you want a belt knife that can be your workhorse. It can do all the chores around camp. And so that if you have to, you can go without a saw, you can go without a hatchet, you can go without a machete, as long as you got that belt knife. Well, you might be surprised to learn that I disagree. I disagree. If I could only have one cutting tool out in the woods, I'll tell you right now, my choice would be a saw, one of these folding saws. And now I'm holding that up for the camera. I'm holding up the most popular one that a lot of bushcrafters are using. I think it's the most popular one. It's called the Gomboy Silky Saw, and it's Japanese made. And so I'm holding that up, showing that off to everybody. Packs down in folds up, which is fantastic. It doesn't weigh much of anything at all. And boy, does it handle a hard workload around camp. And so I am a big fan of the saw. Another reason why I'd be willing to give up my belt knife for the silky saw is that I always carry a pocket knife, and specifically a Swiss Army pocket knife. I think this is the hunter edition of the pocket of the Swiss Army knife. I've been carrying a pocket knife on me since grade school. I carried a Swiss Army knife all through grade school, all through high school, all the way through adulthood up to now. And I'll tell you what, it finally became a problem while I was living in Philadelphia. Old girlfriend I was seeing from Argentina invited me to a Latin dance club down in Center City, Philadelphia. And, this was back in probably around 2011. I was in my mid-30s, late 30s. So anyway, I had been carrying these in my pocket for my entire life, no problem. She invites me down into the city. That's right. It's probably a fantastical idea to you to imagine me, Mr. Old Redneck, coming out of Appalachia, going to Philadelphia and going to dance at a dance club, a Latin dance club in the city in Philadelphia. But that's what I did. I'll tell you what, alcohol makes many things possible you'd think were impossible. Anyway, I was trying to get in there, and the guy at the door pats me down. And he says, "What's this?" I pull my Swiss Army knife out of my pocket. He says, "You can't have weapons in here." I said, "Well, I'm not carrying any weapons. This is a tool." He says, "Buddy, where I'm standing, that's a weapon, and you can't have it in here." So that I lost my Swiss Army knife. The people I was there with, they were already inside the club, and so they confiscated my knife, and I lost it that night. But that was really the only problem I ever had with it. A lot of you out there might be thinking, did I run into any problems carrying a knife at school? Well, it was different times back then, and the short answer is no. Never had a problem with it. It wasn't a big deal. I went to a country school anyway. My best friend in school, I remember back when the movie Rambo come out. It might have been the first Rambo or the sequel. Anyway, back in those days, there was no internet. So if you wanted to order something, you'd find like an advertisement in a magazine, and then you would clip out the coupon or whatever, or the order form, and you'd fill out that order form, and you'd send money off in the mail, and then you'd get a product. And in this case, he ordered this big Rambo survival knife. Some of you might have seen it. It's a big, cartoonishly big knife. It's got all these bells and whistles and everything. It's got some survival stuff in the handle and everything like that. But he did that, and I remember him taking it to school with him. We rode the school bus together, and I remember him getting on the school bus and showing that knife off to me on the school bus, pulling it out and everything while we're riding down the road. No seat belts on the school bus, down these country roads on our way to school, and him showing off that knife to me and it not being a problem. So that was the reality of the world I grew up in. And of course it's changed. So I doubt, my daughter would get away with carrying a pocket knife to school nowadays, but back in the days, that's what we did. So back to, if I had a choice between all these things, these hatchets, these knives, belt knives, and all this stuff, what would I pick? I would pick the saw, the folding saw. It earns its keep every time I take it out there. And I actually end up using it a lot more. It carries a heavier load, does a lot more for me than my belt knife ever ends up doing. Although, if I have my druthers, of course I want all these things. I'm just saying that when it comes down to which one is more useful, one of these belt knives or a foldable saw, I think a foldable saw wins every time, especially if you're carrying a pocket knife anyway. Because let's say I were to get lost out there, and I'm lost in the backcountry for 3 months, 4 months, and I'm trying to survive out there. Well, I'd be able to clean small game and stuff like that with my Swiss Army knife. It wouldn't be as easy to do as if I had my belt knife with me, but I could get by. Maybe you're thinking, well, what am I going to strike my ferro rod with? If I don't have the 90-degree spine on the back of my belt knife. You can strike a ferro rod with your foldable saw. It strikes a ferro rod just fine. For that matter, you can find a rock and strike your ferro rod with a rock. Anything with a sharp edge. Well, let's get into me showing off these products here. I'm going to be honest about this. I'm going to tell you what I like about some of these things, what I don't like about some of these things. And I'll tell you what, since I'm already singing the praises of these foldable saws, why don't we start with the saws? Maybe you've seen me show off this Boreal 21 saw in the past. You might be thinking, doesn't a buck saw type saw have an advantage over these folding saws? The answer is no. There was a time where I thought that they would, and I insisted on having like a buck saw type thing. And so I've got one here. This is a foldable buck saw. I can't remember who makes this, but it's a Boreal 21. You can see how much I use it. It's got spider web hanging there off the end. But anyway, it folds like this. For those of you watching the video, folds like this. See if I can get that in there. I've showed this off before. All right, so now you've got your buck saw, and you might think, well, that offers all kinds more stability and all this stuff. Well, it does, but unnecessarily. These saws are much heavier than, for example, these silky saws, these gomboys, which are Japanese. They fold down, much smaller. This thing, this Boreal 21 I'm showing everybody on the video, that's going to stick up out of your pack. Even though it collapses and everything, it just does not fold down as compact as these silky saws. So they don't offer a benefit. I used to think like you're going to be able to cut through something much better with a buck saw type style thing than with one of these little folding saws. And another thing that I thought was that your hand will get a lot less tired with one of these buck saws than it will with one of these folding silky saws. They don't. I'll tell you, with these silky saws, I have gone through some really large logs, and it has not taken me any more effort or energy than if I were using a buck saw. So I've not noticed any improvement. Now, I will tell you about these folding saws. You do have to know how to use them, and if you don't use them right, you can break the end off out of them, and you don't want to do that. When I say use them right, what I mean is the teeth are designed to cut on the pull, not on the push. So on the draw is when they cut. What that means is that you don't want to be exerting any downward force on the saw blade when you're pushing through the log, only when you're pulling back toward you. As long as you keep that in mind, man, it saves you all kinds of energy and effort, and it just makes your work such a cinch. So this is the Gomboy. Now the Gomboy, I'm showing it off, but I want to show you something better that I just discovered here recently. These saws I'm now holding up to the camera are by Lagom, Lagom. They're ever slightly so smaller than the silky Gomboy. You'll notice that of these Lagoms, I have two. That's important. Why is that important? Because these I can't remember what everybody calls these. They call them silky saws, but I don't remember if they know them as Gomboy silkies or silky Gomboys. Anywho, that's neither here nor there. The silky saw, I did a price check before I started this video, and this particular silky saw is running currently for about $40. I seem to remember having to pay a lot more than that for mine. Maybe the price has come down. And maybe it's because other people are getting into the game of making these saws, such as Lagom. The Lagom saws I'm holding right here are currently selling for $44 for two. That's right. for $40, for a little bit over $40, you get two. So you can throw one in your backpack for going out into the wilderness. You throw the other one into your bug out bag. It's a fantastic deal, in my opinion. And I actually believe that these are superior, possibly superior in quality to the Japanese silky saws. So those of you watching, I want to show you this. They're really beautiful, and they've got this nice rubbery grip on them. But so the Gomboy has a locking mechanism on its back that locks when you completely extend the blade. So I'm extending the blade. For those of you just listening, I'm extending the blade. It's like a folding knife, but it's a saw operating like a folding knife. All right. So I've just extended this thing, and most of you heard that thing lock when I extended that. So just like a lock blade knife, you have to break on the back. There's a button. You press that button, and then that releases the blade, and then you can fold her back up. That's how the silky saw works. These Lagams do something interesting. You actually, and I think that the reason why they did this is for transport in your backpack. So the blade will not come open. See, that's the difference between this Lagam and the silky saw. The silky saw the blade can actually loosen up, and it can flip open or catch on something and be pulled open when it's in your pack. These Lagams can't do that because the locking mechanism doesn't allow for the blade to open until you press the lock release, and then it'll open up about half of the way. You press it again to open the blade the rest of the way, the full way, and there it locks. So those of you watching, I want to show this off. It's real pretty. It's got a green rubbery handle and a really nice orange blade on it. I like that. It means you can find it if you drop it out in the middle of the woods. And let me show you these two blades together. All right. They're pretty much the same size. Now, the Gomboy does have about 5 inches additional length to it. But remember what I said about breaking out the tip? I did that. I broke out the tip of the first silky saw that I owned. And it cut it down to about the size of these Lagams. And what I learned about that is that with these silky saws, you're never using the last 5 inches of the blade anyway. And I continued to use that silky saw with the broken end on it for a long time. I still use it. I think it's in my bug out bag. I mean, it still works just fine. So that actual 5 inches additional to the silky saw over the Lagam, I really don't think offers you any super benefits. I think the Lagam is just a perfect size for these things. And you'll see that the teeth the Lagams have exactly the same style teeth on them, meaning all the work that they do happens on the draw, happens when you're pulling, not when you're pushing. So again, that's just a fantastic idea. If you're interested in these saws, they're 8.2 inch 2-pack hand saws, really well made. Love the design. I actually love that they're actually a little bit smaller than the silkies, because that means they pack away better, stay out of the way better. Here's what they look. Here's the size difference of them folded up. Not a whole lot of difference, but the Lagams are smaller, and I just think they're a little bit better made. I think they've got better features built into them. That's our conversation about saws. Now I want to go into talking about, wait, I've got one more saw I forgot. This come in a kit. Let me see if I can pull up the details of this kit. All right, so this kit, if you look for this online, it sells for $40. It comes with a belt knife, comes with a terrible little hatchet, little useless hatchet. It does come with a machete. It comes with a silky saw styled saw. Comes with a ferro rod. and some kind of sheath for some of these things. So those of you looking here on the screen can see this set. For those of you who are just listening, I just described what's in here. You got like a canvas, a black canvas sheath. It's like a double sheath. It holds the machete and it holds the belt knife. It's actually $39.99 was what this was selling for. It's not terrible. I'll tell you what I think makes it worth that price. The machete, the belt knife, the saw, and the ferro rod. I think that's a fair price for those things. Again, those of you who are watching the video can see this hatchet. For those of you just listening, trust me, this hatchet sucks. It's terrible. I think they call those skeleton hatchets. So it's not a real hatchet. It's just a flat piece of metal shaped into a hatchet. I'll tell you, it is sharp as can be. I could shave with that. And it come oiled. I'll tell you another thing that kind of cheapens this whole set here is that it's got this cordage. So for those of you who are just listening, this stuff doesn't have, like the knives don't have a wood handle on it. The machete doesn't have a wood handle. It's all just skeleton. But then what they've done is they've wrapped this cordage around the handles where normally you would have a wood handle. The problem is they didn't use 550 paracord. This isn't paracord. This is like, I don't know, this is kind of like string that you would use for your shoes, like your tennis shoes. It's kind of like that kind of string. So it's not actual paracord. So it feels flimsy. It doesn't really cushion the handle. It just feels cheap. So anyway, those of you watching, there's the really lousy hatchet, if you can call it that. And the hatchet's got some lug nut openings there so that you can tighten a lug nut if you want to. But let me show you the good qualities of this kit here. It does come with a machete. Again, it's just like a skeleton machete. Show this up on both of my screens. I got two screens going for this. So those of you who are just listening to the show here, you want to see this stuff that I'm talking about later, be sure to subscribe to the Practical Woodsman channel on YouTube and Rumble, and you'll get to see this stuff I'm showing off. Anyway, you see there the string on that handle of that machete. Again, it's not paracord. It's just like shoestring. And so it doesn't provide a whole lot of comfort there for your hand. The machete is not terrible. It's not fantastic either. It's also just like it's got a good thickness. That steel's got a good thickness to it. But the machete is not all that long. And it's just your typical machete. But I'll tell you, one of the good things about that is that you could take off that shoestring and then wrap your own 550 paracord around that handle and improve that quite a bit. But also, it's not heavy. I like that they didn't include like wooden handles and all that because it saves on weight. This is something that you actually could take with you into deep into the woods if you're traveling on foot, and it wouldn't add a whole lot of weight to your pack weight. So that would come in handy. Now, a lot of people are like, what are you going to need a machete for? Well, it's true. In most cases, you probably ain't going to need a machete. But just 2 winters ago, I took one of my really good buddies and my daughter out to an area where we were going to sleep in this cave that I remembered finding years ago, it was actually my brother took me out there. My brother's the one who found the cave. And we went and spent a Christmas out there, a Christmas night. So I was going to take my buddy and my daughter out there. I'm telling you what, the briar patches just made it almost impassable. It was all along this creek. We got started back behind this water treatment plant, but just getting back there so that we could get into the wilderness was, my goodness, what a mess that was. I don't know if you've ever been hung up in a briar patch, but those thorns are so sharp, if they just barely rub up against you, especially if you're dressed in all this modern day backpacking equipment and stuff. I mean, that stuff rips so easy and catches on thorns so easy. And that's exactly what happened. The 3 of us, I bet you it took us 2 hours just to travel a football field's length of distance because of those briars. I remember the whole time we're going through that, I was thinking, if I just had a machete, I could make short work of this. This is taking forever, and you'd get hung up in there, and you'd be afraid to move an inch because you could just feel all the briars like just waiting to come through your clothing and get you. But yeah, something like this would have made that experience so much easier. So that's one machete. Comes in this set. Let me show you the knife. It's also just a skeleton belt knife, but I'll tell you what, it ain't terrible, and it saves on all kinds of weight because it's got no wood handle. Again, it's just a skeleton full tang knife, and the grip is wrapped with what looks like cheap shoestring. Again, you could take that shoestring off there and just wrap your own like 550 paracord around that handle and fix that right up. I feel bad for you guys who are just listening because you can't see this beautiful little simple knife. I mean, it's not going to win any knife awards or anything like that, but goodness, for a bug out bag or something, it'd be great. And again, that comes sharp enough to shave with. The reason why I wanted to show you this set and not move on from our discussion about saws before I showed you this whole set is that it also, like I mentioned a little earlier, it does come with one of these folding saws. So I'm holding this up to, it's a hit doo-doo. I ain't kidding you, folks. It's a hit doo-doo brand. You guys are thinking about making that up. All right, let me hold that up to the camera there so you all know I'm not fibbing. That's actually what that's called. Hit doo-doo folding saw. And it comes in with this kit with this machete, but it's not terrible. It also has a rubber handle. It's exactly the same size as these Lagom saws that I've been showing off, which means it's just slightly smaller than the silky saw, but it's made exactly the same way. It's only got the one lock. Not a terrible saw. So remember, if you want, you can spend $40 on a silky saw, or you can spend $40 and get two of these Lagom saws, or you can spend $39.99 and get this set here with this belt knife, this machete, ferrocerium rod, and this saw, which seems to be just as good as any silky saw. So it's just, I guess, a matter of how do you want to spend your $40. And yes, of course, it comes with this ridiculous hatchet, which I don't even know what use that would serve around camp. But you do get the hatchet along with this set, okay? So there you all go. All right. Now, that is it for saws. Let's get on talking about hatchets. What do you say? Now, you might be wondering what I think about hatchets. What do I think about hatchets as far as taking deep into the backcountry with you? Well, I love hatchets. The truth is, I absolutely love hatchets. I love them to death. But that's not really the question. The question is not really whether I love hatchets or not. The real question is, do I believe that they typically earn their place in a pack where space and weight is at a premium? You're going to have to be carrying this thing for maybe 30, 40 miles. Is it really going to live up? I mean, is it really going to earn its place in your gear? And the answer is that, unfortunately, most of the time, it does not. Hatchets do not earn their space in a pack in real-world conditions in most situations. I do end up taking one from time to time anyway. And I'll tell you what I actually like more than using the hatchet part of the hatchet is using the back of the hatchet as like a striking device, as like a hammer. I really like having a hammer-like tool out in the backcountry. And that actually seems to come in handy for me more than the hatchet part of the hatchet does. So the answer is yes. I love these hatchets. Most of the time, however, being real about things, and trying to be practical about how I pack out and what I'm going to need and what I'm not going to need, most of the time, I cannot justify packing a hatchet. They just don't, they're not needed as much as other things are. For example, back at the beginning of this discussion, if it comes down to a hatchet or a saw, I'm taking a saw every time. Because even though I love being able to turn my hatchet around and use it as a hammer to, like, you know, hammer in stakes or things like that, a rock can also do that. The actual cutting part. I mean, if you're using a hatchet to cut through a log, you're doing it wrong, because your little folding saw, your little silky style folding saw, will do the job so much more easily and require so much less effort than is going to be required using a hatchet. So I've said that I really like turning the hatchet around and using the back of it as a hammer. Boy, that comes in handy, and it really simplifies certain things. Another thing is, when you wake up in the middle of the night and you don't know what's outside your shelter, you're hearing something moving around out there. You don't have a dog with you or something like that. You don't have a gun, because nobody who's traveling long distances, real long distances through real wilderness, is carrying a gun. It might be different if you're carrying you're traveling by horse, or you're pulling a sled or something like that. But nobody who's traveling 50 miles is carrying 2 rifles and ammo. You know, this is another thing that I've failed to say in the past when I've railed against these people who talk about what they've got in their bug out bags and stuff. And I go, yeah, okay, that person has no idea what they're talking about. 2 rifles, trident heads, and all these silly things. Simply carrying a gun is not simply carrying a gun. Why not? Because a gun isn't any good without ammunition. So if you're packing a gun, what else by necessity are you packing? Ammunition. And neither one of those things are light. Both of those things are so heavy. And you're trying to fit those things in. You're trying to take other things that are going to be more useful to you that you're actually going to need. Buddy of mine, I took him on a trip. First time we went out into the deep mountains in Pennsylvania. We get about halfway through, and we're unpacking one day in camp, and he pulls out a gun. Well, I got nothing against guns, guys. I like guns. I grew up around guns. I like people who like guns. Farmers, woodsmen, hunters. Those are the people who I trust with guns. And so I'm very comfortable around them. I'm very comfortable around people with guns, as long as I know that they're the type of people who know guns. But I said to him, why are you packing that for? And he said, well, I didn't know. I've never done anything like this. I didn't know if I needed to bring something like this or not. And I said, well, what are you afraid of? He said, I'm not afraid of anything. And I said, boy, that must be, I'll tell you, it can't be light. And he hands it to me, and of course it's not light. And of course he's carrying the ammunition too, which is also not light. He's carrying these clips of ammunition, not light. So, at no point did he have any use for the gun at all. What if we'd come across a bear? A little handgun isn't going to do anything to a bear. And the bear's going to move so fast that he's probably not going to have time to dig through his pack or whatever to find that gun and use it anyway, that little handgun. But my argument, so you say, well, what about protection out there against other people? Bear spray will do the same thing. A bear spray will incapacitate a bear. Well, it'll run a bear off, and it'll completely incapacitate a human being. So if you're carrying bear spray, there's really no need to be carrying guns and ammunition. But what we're talking about right now are these hatchets. I'll tell you what, when I wake up in the middle of the night, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's dark, and I'm trying to figure out if that's a yote or if that's a bear out there, it sure does feel good to be able to reach over and grip my hatchet and wait for the thing to pass. I just feel like a hatchet would offer a lot more self-defense against an animal than even my belt knife. Definitely more than the saw. And so it does provide some security. You feel strong and you feel like you can defend yourself when you've got one of these things in your hand and you're far out in the woods. Another thing is if you need to like clean a tree of its branches, these hatchets come in handy. So you can clean, once you cut down a tree at like a little sapling or something, you want to clean it of its branches. These hatchets make quick work of that. So for little tasks like that, the hatchet, I'll tell you, it's really nice to have. It just usually doesn't do enough in real life as far as practical things it can do for you as a tool around real life camp in the real life wilderness. It just doesn't usually do enough to earn its place in a pack. Having said that, let me show off the ones that I've got here. This one here that I've been throwing around in this video is by Wig-ing, W-I-G-I-N-G, Wig-ing. It's a beautiful, beautiful hatchet. It's got a really nice curved handle in it that feels like pine. It's definitely not hickory or anything like that, but they've aged the handle and the hatchet itself or something to make it look gritty and used, and it's a beautiful hatchet. You can get this hatchet currently on Amazon for about $39.99. That's what I'm looking at right now. It's 12.2 inch hatchet, Bushcraft hatchet, 1065 high manganese steel, beechwood handle. Okay, it's a beechwood handle. Comes with a leather sheath. Beautiful. I love it. It's a really beautiful hatchet there. And let me show you its twin sister. I've got another one, which is just a different style. This is the 12.2 hatchet Bushcraft hatchet, 1065 high manganese steel, beechwood handle. And this is just stainless steel. The other one, her twin brother there, like I said, is a little bit different design on the hatchet itself. The steel, I don't know what they call that, but it's darkened all the way up about to the end of the cutting part of the hatchet. And this other one is just bright, shiny stainless steel all over. But it's the same hatchet, just a different head. Just a different head on that hatchet. What do you think about those, you folks who are watching? You like those? Pretty nice, man. I'll tell you what, it's worth every bit $39.99 American. Really love the design of those heads there. It's not like a typical hardware store hatchet. Let me show you a typical hardware store hatchet. I got one right here. This is a 1/4 pound camp axe, and I just got this at the local hardware store. You're going to pay less for something like that, but it's a little bigger, not as purty. It does have a hickory handle. I like that. It's not as purty. It's more designed just for utility, right? For those of you watching, compare this, just your typical generic hatchet from the local hardware store, compared to these like artisan hatchets that you can now get off of Amazon. Aesthetics matter. Aesthetics do matter. I really enjoy something. I really enjoy using something that is beautiful to hold and look at, more than something that is kind of just plain. Now, having said that, beauty does not outweigh, in my opinion, aesthetics do not outweigh, in my opinion, the practicality of a thing. So, my druthers is that it be practical, it be useful, it be well made, and it look beautiful. But I'm not going to buy something just because it looks beautiful, and then it's not going to be practical for me to use, those sorts of things. So but I do like beauty. I know I've talked in the past about how silly it is to care about how things look and stuff like that, but it's not like I don't care about beauty at all. It's just there are other priorities to carrying something or to buying something or to having something. And those beauty is kind of like last on the rung of those priorities for me. All right. Wig-ing. It's either Weissing or Wig-ing hatchets. And again, those come with really nice sheaths, leather sheaths, real leather sheaths. 12.2 inch, 1065 high manganese steel for less than $40. That is a pretty good deal. Are these my favorite hatchets? They are not. They're pretty good, but I've got one that's even better. And I'll tell you, this brand that I'm really, really, really fond of is a brand called, it's got a weird name, JXE-JXO. I'm going to show it off here in just a second. Before I show off the JXE-JXO hatchet and really tell you why I love it so much, let me show you off first this Gerber hatchet, which has it's got like a plastic handle, a hollow plastic handle. And you might, I was hesitant to buy that. I was looking for a way to carry a hatchet and to save a bunch of weight. And so I bought this Gerber hatchet, which is like a composite everything. It's a Fiskars Gerber hatchet. Look at the way that the head is in that. So, many hatchets have a hole in the hatchet, in the steel. And your handle goes right up through the middle of that steel, and then you put like a nail or something in there to spread that out and lock that into the head of that hatchet. Well, this Gerber comes with a plastic handle, and the plastic handle is actually built up around the head of the hatchet. And I thought, well, I'm going to buy that. That's going to break out of there in no time. And here it is, 15 years later, and this thing is still going strong. So I tell you, it's not a bad deal. If you want to save a lot of weight but still have a hatchet, these Fiskars Gerber plastic hollow-handled hatchets, you could do a lot worse. This thing's been going strong for years now. So I recommend it. You can see the sheath. It's all beat up. I mean, it's looking its age. But the hatchet itself, still sharp, still going strong. The problem is if you break that out into the field, there's no fixing that out in the field. If you break one of these wooden-handled hatchets out in the field, theoretically you could burn that out, fashion your own handle, get that thing right back into working condition out in the field. You can't do that with these plastic hatchets. All right, so JXE, JXO, they've got some of the best products on the market. This hatchet here cost me $33. And what I love about it, why I like this better than those other hatchets I showed you, is it's kind of like a cross between a tomahawk and a hatchet. You don't have a lot of steel there, just enough steel. And that's what I love about that. This is just right. You can pack that and carry that, and it doesn't add a whole lot of weight to your pack. Come on in. I am recording, but I knew what I was doing when All right, so if you're just listening to the audio here, no time has passed for you. For those of you watching the video, you can see that I'm wearing different clothes. It's a different day for me. And what happened was, while I was recording this show, a friend of mine dropped in on me, and I spent the evening socializing with him. And so I'm back now. I'm going to try to make this coherent, pick up where we left off. I think where we left off, we were talking about these hatchets. And I was showing you my favorite one, which is by the company JXE, JXO. I'm telling you, they just make some really nice products. And in fact, it's interesting that when my friend dropped by yesterday, of course, I had this whole setup here going, and he come in and he saw the stuff that was lying around here. He's something of a machinist, and he knows steel. And one thing he was telling me about these, it's either Weissing or Wigging hatchets. He says whenever he sees something totally chromed out like that, he suspects that it's because it's inferior steel. They're trying to hide the aspects of the inferior steel. So I thought that was interesting. Although it's not a terrible hatchet, it's a lot heavier than this JXE, JXO hatchet that I like. And what I really like about why this is my preferred hatchet is if you check that out, and I can't remember if I already showed this off or not, but if you check out the steel on both of these hatchets, this one here just seems to me to be overkill. I really don't need that much steel for projects out in the woods when I'm on foot. It just adds weight. I mean, I appreciate that they're trying to make that thing strong, but this JXE, JXO hatchet right here, which is kind of like a cross between a hatchet and a tomahawk. just hits the sweet spot, and I can use the back there like a hammer. It doesn't add a whole lot of weight to my pack. It's a joy to pack this thing out into the woods. So that's my preference right there. I reckon for those of you who are watching, give you a really nice up-close look at that JXE JXO hatchet. She's a beaut. In fact, I should probably get myself a couple more of these. Now, but before we go on to talk about knives, as long as we're talking about JXE, JXO brand stuff, which you can get off of Amazon, let me show you the machete that they sent me. This thing is it's just a thing of pure beauty. I just really appreciate the designs and the things that JXE, JXO is doing at really reasonable prices. Because I mean, if you go looking for a knife or some of these hatchets and stuff, I mean, you may be put on a waiting list, and a lot of times, but JXE, JXO is making these products that are really, really high quality products at very reasonable prices. And if you buy them on Prime on Amazon, you get free shipping. So it's not like some of these other knives and stuff. For example, if I buy a knife direct from PKS, Pathfinder Knife Shop, by the time you add on taxes and shipping and everything, the price is just outrageous. You think you're starting off, I mean, you get on there, you think you're going to be paying like $130 for the knife. You end up paying like $230 by the time taxes and shipping and everything's thrown on there. So when I can buy something off of Amazon, free shipping, you can't beat it. So I kind of like trying to find it on Amazon. Anyway, here's this machete. I'm showing everybody a machete here on the camera. This is a machete by JXE, JXO. Look how, let me describe it for you folks who are just listening. So I have to be really careful with this. So let's see. It's about 17 inches from nose to butt, I reckon. Yeah, about 17 inches. The blade is a solid 11 inches. Well, the cutting part of the blade, it's about 9.5 inches. And then you got a space down here for your thumb. It's got a thumb ridge on the back of it there. And the handle is, the handle's 6 inches. So that's what we're looking at. It's got a really thick spine here on the back. I got to be really careful with this because I'm telling you, it comes razor sharp. I don't know if I told you folks the story about me taking my buddy and my daughter out on this trip a couple years back. We run into this big briar patch, huge briar patch. It could not get through it, and this is exactly what I needed on that trip. Check out the spine on that. Like I said, I really got to be careful with this because it's razor sharp. I could shave with it. So hopefully that's getting picked up real good in the camera. So this currently, it's actually comes in a set. A belt knife comes with it. I'm going to show you that belt knife. Oh, here it is. You won't believe this. It's currently marked 10% off, this machete. That is a significant amount of steel and designed really nice. Single tang runs right down through the handle. But that is currently running for $26.99. This machete, along with this little belt knife. Let me show you the belt knife real quick. Sorry for you guys who are just listening that you can't see it, but it's not a huge knife. I wouldn't normally carry a knife like this, and it's chromed out. But still, it's a nice little knife. It's got an interesting design to it. But what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd throw this thing into my fish kit and use that as a fillet knife. It's not designed like a typical fillet knife. It's much shorter and stubby than your typical fillet knife. But I thought it would fit really nice into my fishing backpack, and I could use that as a fillet knife. Also, comes sharp enough, razor sharp enough to shave with. And that's another thing I like about those JXE, JXO products is, man, they come in a nice presentation. They're usually nicely oiled up, sharp as a razor, and I just think they're really nice quality products at really reasonable prices. I mean, you folks who are watching the video, look at this machete. $26 A belt knife comes with it. You can't beat that with a club. That is a sweet deal. So again, I don't work for these people, but when they sent me this and I saw the quality of that, I said, man, it'd be a joy for me to share that with people and send some business their way. So if you get that, I'm not your dad or anything, but if you do get that, for crying out loud, be very careful with it. Because somebody could seriously get hurt with something like this. Very easily, unintentionally. Comes with a nice canvas sheath here. It secures there with a button clasp. And there you go. All right, let's start talking about some of these knives. Yeah, I think this is the moment a lot of you have all been waiting for, talking about these knives. I'm going to share with you the knife that I just most recently got because she's beautiful. This is an Outdoorsman Damascus hunting knife. Camping knife 326 it's called. You see this sheath? It's a little goofy looking. I mean, let me describe it to you folks who are just listening. It's like a light tan leather sheath, but it's got a whole lot going on. It's got straps and stitching and holes punched into it and buckles and all sorts of things. I mean, it's made to look very, very woodsy. It's made to look very woodsy, like you would think about like a frontiersman or something like that packing a knife. This is what you would imagine. It's very, what's the term I'd use for it? Flowery. I mean, it's just got a lot going on. So I'm going to open her up and show you this. This is a wood-handled knife, single tang knife. That's about all I got for it. I can't tell you about the steel or anything like that. Only that it's a beautiful knife. It's got a really interesting design to it. It's very beautiful. It's got a 5-inch blade and a 5-inch handle. Again, it's single tang, and actually the steel runs out the butt of the handle a little bit, and it's got holes in there. You could run some paracord through or something like that. I apologize to you folks who are just listening. You can't see this, but it's got like all these elegant designs in the actual steel. It arrived nicely oiled up. Also, it arrived super sharp. And I'm actually looking forward to getting this out into the woods and using this. It's because it's such a unique knife. I don't have any other knives like this. It's hardy. It's beautiful. It's fun. It has these beautiful angles cut into it. And so for you, those of you who are watching, I'm going to hold this up real close to the camera so you can get a real nice look at this. Yeah, I'm sorry for my hand shaking there. I was kind of standing in an odd angle, holding my arm out to the camera, and I'm kind of like hanging over top my microphone. So that odd angle it's hard for me to maintain my balance there. My hand's shaking pretty good. But so there's that knife. That's the Outdoorsman Damascus hunting knife, camping knife number 326. And again, it's a beautiful, beautiful knife. Now, I'll tell you something that worried me when it come in the mail. And my buddy who dropped by yesterday, I showed him this knife. I said, "What do you think about this?" And he says, "I'm not convinced that that's great steel." And I said, "Well, I ain't either." And I'll tell you what gave it away. The reason why I felt that way and do feel that way. Even though it looks fantastic, the fact that it's solid, supposedly solid steel, solid wood handle, it should weigh more than it does. When I think of quality steel, I think of a knife having heft to it, and this knife is awfully light for what it is. If that were nice, solid, high carbon or really dense steel, I would expect this thing to weigh a lot more than it does. And so, just being honest with you, I don't know what this is selling for right now. But you're going to buy something like this mostly for beauty, mostly just for the pleasure of using something that looks so beautiful. But as far as it being a super high quality steel, I'm suspecting that is not the case. Of course, I am not a professional evaluator of steel or anything like that. I don't know a whole lot about the quality of steel. I just know that I have other knives of similar size that feel a lot more robust in my hand. That's what I know. And I'm going to show some of those to you right now. But I tell you, as far as looks go, this knife I'm showing everybody right now, you just can't hardly beat it. I mean, the sheath that it comes with is a super nice sheath. The sheath alone, I would say, would be worth $30. So if you could get that knife for $30, $40, absolutely, it would be worth that. Definitely that's a fancy knife, boys, I'll tell you. All right, of course, I just finished showing off this JXO belt knife that come with the machete. It's shiny, kind of chromed out little tiny belt knife with an really interesting shape to it. Again, I think I'm just going to use that as a fillet knife for the field. And there's a fifth knife that I don't currently have on me, but I gifted it to a friend, and I recorded him doing sort of a review of that knife, and I'm going to share that with you here at the end. But last 4 knives, and then I've got a 5th one that I'll show you once we finish here. But before we get started on my knives, let me show you this trainer knife for children that I also got off Amazon. This is by Z Lemma, and this is a from tip to butt, it's 8 inches, and it's a trainer knife for kids. It's got a plastic handle, but it is a single tang knife. It's stainless steel. It is sharp, but it's got a dull point at the end, so a child can't accidentally poke herself or stab herself with the end of the knife. She can still cut herself because it is still sharp. I had my daughter out yesterday doing some whittling with this knife. It's got a hole for the child's finger to go through just to provide some stability on that knife. And so for a trainer knife, and this hand, I ordered this one in pink because that's my daughter's favorite color. And so you can get these in different colors. If you folks are interested in something like this, it's going for about $25 on Amazon. It's a kid's knife, Boy Scout knife with educational ring, it says, and sheath. It does come with a cheap little leather sheath. I don't know if that's real leather or not, or if that's pleather. Rounded tip whittling knife, G10 handle for boys and girls. It says for boys, but it's for girls too. Age 8 to 12. First camping and cutting. And I was telling a story of my daughter about the very first knife that I ended up with. I was about 7 years old, and I remember my mom come to me, and she said, "Your dad was talking to me, and we've both decided that we think you're old enough to have a knife." So that weekend, we went out to different flea markets, and my dad said, "You pick out the knife you want." And my very first knife was it was a pocket knife with a pearl handle, and it had about 4 blades to it. And I was so excited to get that knife. Of course, my dad went through me with knife safety and everything like that, and I still ended up cutting myself because that's part of what happens when you're trying to learn how to use a knife. But I was so excited to have gotten that knife that evening my mom said, "Son, it's time to take a bath." And I didn't want to part with my brand new knife. And so I took the pocket knife into the bath with me. I didn't want to part with it. I was so excited to have gotten it. Of course, what happened was it completely rusted out. As the days passed, it completely rusted out, which just goes to tell you, I picked a good knife. I apparently had picked a high carbon knife, not some stainless steel thing. So it lasted me a couple months, I think, before I couldn't do anything with it. It just rusted so much I couldn't even open the blades. But that was my very first knife. And my daughter now is 9. And I'm taking a little bit more care with her than my parents took with me, just because I'm I worry more, I reckon. And so I think that this knife here that I'm showing everybody, it's a belt knife. It's not a pocket knife or a foldable knife. I think it's nice for her to get her started, get her familiar with using a knife and whittling, doing some chores around camp and stuff like that. So if you folks are interested in that, the links for that will be down in the description of the show. This next knife here, this grown-up knife, this comes in a set. The set, I got some locusts outside my door there. Man, they're making a lot of noise. I don't know if the microphone's picking it up, but it's sure distracting me. Anyway, this set here, axe and fixed blade knife combo set. Full tang, walnut wood handle, leather sheath included. I'm telling you what, the leather sheath that comes with this is a real stinker. It's terrible. Y'all watching can see that I've got some duct tape on there. That's because that thing split after I put the knife in, took the knife out about 5 times. The leather sheath split. So I've got some duct tape on there. It's doing the trick right now. So, I mean, it's passable, but I'd say that's where they're trying to save their money. So it comes with a little hatchet. It's a skeleton hatchet. I'm not even going to show it off. I think I throwed it away. But the knife is something that I'm satisfied with. It's a good knife. Walnut handle. It is stainless steel, but it feels like a quality knife. It's got heft to it. The steel feels dense. That's what I'm talking about. You can tell when you've got good steel because it's got weight to it. What are some reasons why you would want stainless steel over a high carbon blade? Well, there's lots. If I were like in a tropical environment, or if I were on a beach anywhere near an ocean, on the coasts, anything like that, I would never take a high carbon blade. The air, the salt in the air and from the seawater will just eat your high carbon knife to bits. So if I were stranded on any island or anything like that, anywhere near an ocean, I would prefer to have a good quality stainless steel knife over high carbon any day. And that's what this is. And it's a really beautiful knife. I hope you folks, well, let me hold it up to the camera and give you all a nice eyeball full of this knife. Trying to get, there we go. It's got a really nice thick spine on there. It's a 90-degree spine. It's got great balance. Fits in the hand really nice, and comes sharp as a razor. You really got to be careful with these things when they come. Man, it's got a beautiful, nice, thick walnut handle on there, and when you put that in your hand, it just feels so good in the hand. The blade itself is 5 inches. The handle is 4.5 inches. And boy, it's got a really, this is made by Kokuki, Cocuki, Kokuki. And again, I think that the only way you can get this knife is to buy the set. It comes with that stupid skeleton hatchet. And the whole set is about $60. I think the knife itself is worth $60. Again, like I say, especially when you're out looking for a knife, some of these places where you go to get a knife, you have to get on a waiting list. I was looking at PKS knives here yesterday. That's Pathfinder Knife Shop. Most of the knives you want, you have to get on a waiting list. And then they send you an email, and you got to be quick on it, buddy. You got to jump right on and buy that thing as soon as you can because they sell out real quick. So for anybody who wants a knife right now, you could do a lot worse than this Kokuki stainless steel, walnut handled, fixed blade, single tang knife. What a beaut it is. And it's blackened. The whole knife is blackened. Really beautiful drop point design. And I mean, it's a good quality knife. It's definitely worth $60. All right, down to my last two favorites. And these are actually one of these is my current go-to knife. This is the first one I got. These are PKS knives from Self-Reliance Outfitters. This first knife here, they called this the Mountain Lion, the PKS Mountain Lion. It's got walnut handle, single tang, 5-inch blade, a 5-inch handle, more or less. And these are just, you cannot beat the quality of these knives. I think they're the best knives at the best price that you can get. Again, you have to buy them from PKS Knives. And like I'm looking at not this one, but the current iteration of this mountain lion knife is selling for $148.99. I ain't kidding you. By the time you put on shipping and taxes and you add a sheath, believe it or not, a sheath does not come with it. So by the time you add a sheath, by the time you add the taxes, by the time you add the shipping, you're looking at over $200 for this knife. They don't, and in fact, they don't even sell this knife anymore. It's a beaut. It's got a huge spine there, a really beefy spine, and I think they discontinued this and they renamed it the Mountaineer. That's what I've got in my other hand. For those of you just listening, I'm holding two knives up here. The first one I'm holding up was the Mountain Lion, and I'm just showing that off in the camera, showing that spine off, letting the light hit it so you can see it's a plain knife. It don't have any fancy pantsy special angles or anything cut into the steel of the blade. It's just a slab of steel with a really sharp edge with a drop point. And then here's the Mountaineer. And the Mountaineer is currently selling for $148.99. If you'll notice, it's exactly the same knife. Exactly. Same design, same dimensions, same everything. But they've added some girth to that spine. So even when I had this mountain lion, or when I was using this mountain lion, I thought, man, that's a nice beefy knife. But when I got the Mountaineer, I could tell the improvement they made. They added some girth to that spine. And so the Mountaineer is the current knife that I'm running with, and that's high carbon. Now, I've explained this before. A lot of folks think that you need a high carbon knife in order to strike a ferro rod. That's not true. Remember that kokuki that I was just showing you? It's stainless steel. It's got a 90-degree spine on it. All you need is a sharp edge of anything. It can be a rock. I've explained in the past, I've seen a guy, I saw Lonnie from over there at Far North Bushcraft, break a piece of glass and strike his ferrocerium rod with the glass. So the only reason you'd need a high carbon steel is for the strength of it, and also if you're wanting to start fires using flint and steel. So to start fires with flint and steel, so in other words, striking a spark off your knife, you're going to want a high carbon knife for that. You're not going to be able to do that with a stainless steel knife. Let me get a ferro rod and I'll show you. I'll strike some things with it, because talk is cheap, ain't it? All right, so here's a brand new ferro rod. This might take a few times. I've got that Gomboy silky saw, and I remember I think I was telling you could strike it. You don't need a knife to strike your ferro rod. You could use your silky saw, the edge of your silky saw. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. Woo! Yeah, see, that silky saw strikes a ferro good. How about this stainless steel kokuki knife? Can the back of that strike our ferro rod? Well, yes, not as effectively. Well, how about, there you go. You see that? Yeah, that's the stainless steel, back of the stainless steel knife. And actually, what I used was that thumb grip there on the back of the spine. That's what I struck the ferro with. And of course, you can do that with, let's see, how about that fancy prissy knife that we were talking about, where I was saying that the steel doesn't feel really fantastic to me. Will that strike our ferro rod? Let's see. Oh yeah, strikes it real good. Yeah, so all you need is the sharp edge of anything to strike your ferro rod. You don't need a high carbon knife to do that. Why do you want a high carbon knife? Again, the two reasons are for strength. This high carbon steel is stronger and denser than anything you're going to get otherwise. And so it's going to be a stronger knife. It does require some maintenance. So if you get caught in a rainstorm or something like that out in the woods, you're going to want to dry that thing up, oil it. I try to keep my high carbon knives oiled And you can use any oil. You can use olive oil. That's what I like to use. That's the way I keep them pretty and free from rust. If they do rust up, it's not the end of the world. You just scrub it lightly with some sandpaper and get that, the heavy rust off of it. And actually, when it gets a little bit rusted up, like this old version of my Mountaineer, this is the Mountaineer, the old version of that, the Mountain Lion, you can see that on several occasions it's gotten rust on it. And I actually think that adds some beauty to it. I like to see a thing has been used. In fact, a lot of my kettles and stuff like that, I keep them, I don't wash the outside of my kettles. I like to keep them looking rugged and looking like they've been used and they've been put to use. So that's the same thing with a high carbon knife. A little bit of rust or a little bit of patina, they call it, I reckon, adds some character to a knife, and I really like that. So folks, this show is finally drawn to a close. My goodness, you don't know the hoops that I had to jump through to try. Oh, one last thing. This Weissing. Okay, so do you remember the Weissing knife or the Weissing hatchet that I was showing you? The Weissing hatchets, and also my favorite, the JXE, JXO, come with sharpening stones. So it's included with the purchase are these sharpening stones. And these are quality sharpening stones. They come in these boxes here. They come with a rough side, and they come with a smooth side. So you can carry that out into the field and keep your blade sharp out in the field. The JXE, JXO also comes with its own sharpening stone. So I just wanted to add that if you do purchase those, you do get sharpening stones that come with the hatchet. All right, the last knife I want to show you is the one that I gifted to my buddy, and it's a folding knife. It's a really nice outdoor knife with a wood handle, DA52 folding knife for men, 11 inches hunting pocket knife, wood handle, 5-inch blade with titanium plated safety liner lock and belt clip. Folks, this is probably the best deal on the internet as far as folding knives go. It's selling right now on Amazon for $15.99. That's 15. 1-5. Not 50, 15. And it's easily a $50 knife. So, hop on that right now if you're interested in it. I'm showing you some pictures right now what that knife looks like. Again, I don't have the knife here with me, but I did. It was a gift. I gifted it to a buddy of mine. And I said, would you mind doing a review of this knife? And so I just put the camera on him. He got a little camera shy, but he did all right. And so you're going to see him talking about this knife here in just a second. That's what I'm going to close the show down with. I thank you guys for being here with me. Enjoy the video of my buddy talking about this knife. Y'all take care.
All right, so I got to talk about this knife here. First, when he handed it to me, it's got some weight to it. And you got a pretty decent quality knife in your hand. The handle's nice and smooth, what I liked about it. It's got a little belt clip. Pretty quality, but what I like most about it is the action on this thing. I flawlessly can open this knife and it locks in solid.
Hold that up toward the camera there. Like really get it up there close so they can see the details of the knife.
Just look at this thing.
It's about the length of like a typical belt knife, like maybe a 4 or 5-inch blade.
And how I describe this is everybody loves to have an actual hunting knife on their hip. This is a hunting knife that folds up.
It's got good weight to it.
But the weight is what I like. I mean, you got a quality knife in your hand, but not over heavily. And you got a little thumb assist on here, but it's not needed. Most knives I've held in my hand has this little thumb assist to help it get started to open. Not needed for this knife. I mean, when it's closed, it's closed. And when I want this knife and I'm ready for it, there it is. Now the wood handle, looking at it, I don't know what type of wood that is exactly, but it's tight grain wood. You can see a lot of tight grain in it, but it's smooth in the hand. When it's open, I have a hold of it. It feels good. I have large hands.
Let's see if we can hold that up to a bottle of water there to give everybody a concept of what kind of size we're looking at. It's a significant knife.
Yeah, it's at least open 10 inches. But for a guy like me, I'm 6'3", pretty large hands, very comfortable in my hand. It's perfect. But the balance of it is really good. It doesn't feel overwhelming. Well, when you handed it to me, I thought, ooh, I like the look of that just the way it is. I went to open it just like I normally would, but that thumb assist, and I did, and I thought, wow, it's a tight fit. The joints are tight. I mean, I can't move this blade very slightly. It's put together really good, but yet it's not too tight, but it's not too loose. I mean, that's what I like about it.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
What were you just telling me about the notch there?
Okay, so obviously this notch, when it's open, that's to get in here to put your thumb in.
That's the
to release
lever.
The lock, to open it up. I really feel this release knot part does not need to be this long.
You mean it doesn't have to come out on the other side?
Right, in wrapping over, because when I'm holding this knife, if you can see, that's digging in my finger a little bit. If this was actually, you can get this here so you can, it's not contrast. I was trying to get something.
No, the table's good.
Okay.
This is good.
If this was rounded off at the corners and not have that folded over, if you just had a little round piece, it'd be much more comfortable in the hand, because with this notch cut, there's plenty of room to get your thumb in to hit that.
They've thought this up here. They've put this here so that when you're holding this in your hand, you can reach through to press and release the blade, is what he's saying. Another thing he's saying is that you see how it comes around the side here. Let me get that in focus. When you're holding that in your hand, he's saying that that's a discomfort on his finger right there while he's gripping that.
Yeah.
So he says that it doesn't have to wrap around the other side.
It doesn't. It's too much.
Yeah.
That could be less, because there's plenty of room where you. I love this design because it's natural. I can, without looking, I can feel right there where that needs to be to close this knife up.
Right, even right against the side of your thigh, right? But
yes.
You're putting it in your pocket.
No matter where if this is open, no matter which way I'm holding it, I know right where my thumb needs to go.
Yeah. All right.
Which is great, but this needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
But otherwise,
great knife.
Yeah, rocky.